I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, sometimes you quit a job, but the job does not quit you. There's a saying among law enforcement, once a cop, always a cop. And that is the case for the protagonist, Jake McCluskey, in the book, The Last Arrest. It is a riveting book. It is in the tradition of James Patterson. It is such a page turner, you might say that the pages turn themselves. It is written by R.M. Jordan, and we are delighted to have him as a guest today here on Spotlight. Robert, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to join you. Pleasure to be here.
Our pleasure. Loved your book. For the folks at home who haven't read it, let's tell them what it's about.
Okay, the book starts out with a detective approaching his retirement in New York City, and he gets an assignment that isn't quite all that unusual for him. There's a murder in Lower Manhattan, and it looks more like a shootout of a botched robbery. So the victim is examined by the forensics department, and on his person are computer addresses. And so with due diligence, the police department and the forensics department start looking at those computer addresses, and they start getting some nasty responses. And lo and behold, they find the desire to track those computers down and find out what's going on. So there's a chapter in the book where there's a trip by the forensics department personnel, along with Jake, my detective lead, out to New Mexico, and they hunt down one particular one in the middle of the desert. It's an interesting chapter. I think it's one of the ones I enjoy the most. Anyway, so over the course of time, they look up and find all the computers on this particular on this victim's person. They find out, in addition, that he is a person of note. He is an escapee from Sing Sing, and he's amongst the only few that have ever escaped from prison. So they have this curiosity of what was he doing, building computers on the outside. Eventually, they get all the computers back into the forensics department, and they connect them, kind of like a connection that says what they were like in the field, so the computers don't know too much difference, and then they turn it on. And when they turn it on, they really get something completely different. They weren't expecting it. It comes to, I'm not going to bring out too many facts, but from that point forward, they understand that a murder of some many years ago may not have been correctly solved by this person. He has the computer addresses. They gave him they convicted him, and he was wrongly convicted, or he thinks he is, and he's using the computers to search for data. There's an artificial intelligence within the computers that comes out and helps Jake make decisions. Jake also has an inner voice that guides him on just about anything. So between those two, they have to search through all kinds of pathways to find out just exactly what happened with the murder so many years ago.
It's an amazing book. It's amazingly real. You really craft true images of New York and other places in your book. In fact, when you and I were chatting before, I presumed you were a retired police officer and this was your story.
This story, if I may interrupt, has been in my head for a very long time. And even way back when I was employed, it was in the back of my mind. I just never had any time to write it.
Right.
When I got retired, I was talking with my wife one day, and I told her, I'm bored. I don't know what to do. Well, she said, well, you've got that book in the back of your head. Go write it. So a few chapters in, I passed it out to people amongst the neighbors and our friends, and everyone was very positive about it. And with that type of input, with that type of enthusiasm, I just kept at it. It took a while, but I got it written. And yes, it wanders all over the place in terms of of forensic detective investigation. I deliberately did that.
Well, it's great. It's very effective. Like I said, it's very real. Did you have to do a lot of research about policing, or tell me a little bit about how you brought this to life?
There are many sources that I would claim for the plot, and NCIS and Law and Order would be two of them.
Mhm.
Some of the chapters in the Sherlock Holmes book that I have would add to it. I think of all things, how should I say this? The movie North by Northwest with Alfred Hitchcock also had, how should I say, an input. It's not a direct input, but it's the sort of background, how you build a scene, and then you make it come to a conclusion and try to make it enjoyable. So all
Absolutely.
those mixed together, and my writings with my engineering company are in there as well. You'd be surprised when you have to write something for your customer, and in this case, the aerospace was trying to sell things to the government. You have to be clear. You have to write things clearly and specifically. And I did that for many years. So I assume that the clarity, which I hope is in the book, comes from that type of writing.
Yeah, it is very clear and it is very direct. And like I said, I thought it was real. And I like the fact that it seemed a little bit to me like almost like noir in the tradition of like a Raymond Chandler, sort of that inner voice in your head kind of
Mm-hmm.
evoke that 1940s detective to me as well.
Excuse me. Go ahead.
Sure. So yeah, so it kind of invoked that 1940s detective genre as well. I felt that Jake kind of seemed like an old time cop in many ways.
Yes. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Uh,
Uh, Aside from Hitchcock, were there other films that were
oh,
influential in
geez.
writing
Well,
this?
there must be, but
Yeah,
I can't think of it off the
just
top of
part of
my
your
head.
background at this point. Have you? It is very visual. The story. It's a very riveting story. Have you thought about if you were to turn it into a movie? Who would you cast? That kind of stuff.
I don't know. My wife is. I should have her here. She's got any number of people that she thinks would fill the roles out.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, we've thought of it. If it is to be turned into a movie, that would be great. That would be
Yeah.
just unreal.
It'd be wonderful to watch it come to life, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or if it's not a movie, then maybe like 10-part 1 hour programs on Netflix.
Yep.
It would really depend upon how much detail you want to put from the movie into the TV or into
Into the
Netflix.
series, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
if you want to get
exactly.
into a lot of detail, then the 1 hour Netflix environment would be best. If you want to condense it, okay, it's going to have to be a movie. You have to move some things around and or delete other things to get
Have you
it
thought
within it.
about writing any other adventures for Jake? I mean, you
I've
could just
got another one. I've got another one started, but that's a big statement, and it shouldn't be taken too literally because I've had other things coming up, and they got in the way. I've got about 6 or 7 chapters written on the next one, and the plot is not to my liking at this moment. So I've
Mhm.
got to work on it. It
Okay.
could be more science fiction than a detective story. I'm not sure how this is going to go. So I'm working on it. It's just a little bit difficult.
Sounds good. Now, you were mentioning to me before that writing about the New York City subways was sort of like a trip down memory lane.
Oh yeah.
That's what I like best about writing is that it transports you back to another time and place. How long have you been out of the city? Do you miss the city like Jake missed the city when he was in Florida?
I've
Tell
been
me.
out of the city since 1973.
Wow.
I moved to California from 1973 through 1994, 94 to present. I'm here in Pennsylvania,
Okay.
just outside Philly. Do I miss the city? Yes and no. It's a little bit complicated. I think the city has an awful lot to offer. It really does. Yet at the same time, its condition is uh, pretty tough.
It's a tale of two cities. It's the best of times. It's
Yes.
the worst of times, no
Yes.
doubt, especially right now in New York City. Ever since COVID, it's been hard hit, a lot of boarded up stores and restaurants and a lot of crime. But crime is your thing. The name of the book is The Last Arrest. It is a wonderful novel that will keep you guessing, will keep your mind working, will be a great journey to New York City and beyond. It is written by R.M. Jordan, and we were delighted to have him as a guest here today on Spotlight. Robert, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate all of this very
My
much.
pleasure. My pleasure. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.